What should we break to today?
You calling?
What? I'm not calling.
Yeah, you're calling me. You lead us out of this whole shebang.
I didn't ever play team sports. I don't know how that works.
She was hey, you played volleyball? It's not true.
Okay. How about this?
But she was mainly tennis.
Sports count as couples therapy on 3.
That's good.
All right.
Episode 44, Slumpbuster. Sports count as couples therapy on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and JuJu dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Sports count as couples therapy.
Therapy.
Oh, we're slow.
So, I don't know. We'll find out.
All righty, guys. Well, welcome in. I'm your host, JuJu Talk Sports, joined, of course, by my co-host, Dre. And on today's episode, our guests from Guy and Girl Talk Sports, GG Talk Sports, I have both Chad and Steph, correct? If I'm getting your guys' names right?
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yep, spot on.
All right. Fantastic. Well, guys, how's the podcasting life treating you? How's quarantine life treating you? Where are you first calling in from?
Yeah, so we're calling in from Nashville, is where we live currently. And the podcast life is good. It was a bit of a weird time to get into sports podcasting, considering the second we kind of started, sports stopped happening. But, we're getting creative, trying to keep up with a lot of stuff that's still happening. I mean, there's still stuff going on, so it's been good.
I completely agree. You look around, as far as headlines, there's not too much out there, but if you find the little in-between stories, and one thing we've been doing on the show is just having people to have some good conversations about more so the concepts of what's going on in sports, and I think it goes well. I mean, it's a good way to fill the time. If you can't watch sports, you might as well talk about sports. It's the next best thing, right?
There's still plenty
100%.
to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Very lucky with the documentaries going on. I mean, also, shout out the mountain. Deadlifting that weight. That's been entertaining. I will also say we've gotten into the Food Network a little bit.
Yeah, some competition
too competitively with some of that. So now you're trying to make the most out of the situation. Hey, Millie, you want to get down real quick? Let's not do that. Let's not.
The fourth part of this podcast, Billy in the background.
Yeah. Shout out the German Shepherd that thinks she's tough.
No worries. His dogs are always going off whenever we have a podcast. Every single time. Just always rowdy.
It's their time to shine. I don't know. They love the spotlight, I guess.
You mentioned the mountain. The one thing I regret is the fact that gyms aren't open during this time of year, because it's if I can't go to work or do anything that I'm used to doing, I might as well go to the gym, and that's not even an option. So that definitely sucks. Right? If there's one thing I'm missing, one thing I wish was still a thing, it'd be just being able to go to the gym and lift some weights.
No, I know. I agree. Fortunately enough, we've been traveling around in our Airstream for the past, I guess it was a year ago.
Yeah.
And so we kind of had our own mini gym, if you will. Had some weights, a small barbell, some dumbbells here and there. So we have them at our house. So currently we're able to at least, do the small things and at least feel like we're being fit. But man, the gym, it's not the same as gym life. I miss it as well.
Okay, guys. Well, what was kind of your inspiration to get this started? Obviously, a unique dynamic as a couple that talk sports together, which is a really cool concept for a show. What was the exact moment that you guys just looked across the dinner table and just said, you know what, let's go buy some microphones and get this going?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer this?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So we've been together for 9 years, and essentially I played football right when we met. She was big into volleyball and tennis. I ended up playing college football at Pittsburgh State, and then was a free agent for a few years with the NFL and CFL. NFL. And so you can imagine we talk sports like every single day, every single night. I mean, we would text about sports when we currently weren't living together. So it just always was something we talked about. And then we kind of just, I guess you could say, looked at each other across the dinner table like, hey, why not drop like a 30-minute segment talking about sports, since we like literally do it all of the time. So honestly, that's kind of how that whole thing started.
Yeah, I feel like also my dad wished as a second kid that he would have had a son, but he didn't. He had me instead. And so I think he just kind of passed that on to me, a love of sports. And so like he always taught me to look at stats and to actually watch certain plays and like explained everything to me. So then I always kind of loved sports, and then obviously met somebody who loves sports too. So then we're like, we like to get each other's input, but it's also fun to hear the perspective of other people too. So that's kind of why we did the podcast aspect. So that way you can get input of other people too when you're talking about it, because we can get tired of each other.
And we also don't always agree on subjects.
True,
so that's it's always good to see what the social media realm says.
Fair. I mean, Chad, you definitely found a keeper in this one. So, 9 years. Are you guys officially tied the knot, married, all that, or?
We're engaged currently. Yeah, we're engaged. Get married in soon, less than a year.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome that you choose to air out the grievances on a podcast. So that does fit that entertainment criteria as well. And hey, we just mentioned it to intro the show, right? Couples therapy.
Yeah,
Talking
exactly. Couples therapy.
Exactly.
Talking through the issues. One person thinks Dak doesn't deserve the contract. One person does, meet in the middle somewhere. Still might be more productive than some conversations have between like Stephen A and Max Kellerman. So,
Yeah, those two will never agree on purpose, but yeah.
I did see that take out there. It's like people who look at pro wrestling and say that's fake, but look at like some of these talk shows and think they're not fake. It's like, how do these people like have the alternate take on every single subject?
On every topic. Like you will never find one that they'll agree on. And even if they kind of agree, they'll find something to argue no matter if they agree on the subject or not. So agreed. That's definitely staged.
Yeah, 100%. As much as we do enjoy it.
Yeah, that's true.
It has its moments. All right, guys. So you mentioned the documentaries, which have been great to kind of like fill the void of like having live sports on. So we get to turn on the time machine, go back into the 90s, watch this MJ, The Last Dance documentary. And it's been a great time checking out some of the stuff. Last night we had episode 5 and 6. Now, 5 and 6 were mostly about the 92 and 93 title runs for Michael Jordan. You had the gambling issues brought up. We saw certain things like Nike really going out, dropping some DMs and managing to snag them away from Adidas and rival shoe companies. There was a lot to like kind of like digest in those episodes. Like it wasn't about a singular focus as like we bounce around from Dream Team to, like I said, the Nike deals to the gambling. So there was a lot of things that they covered in those like 2 episodes. What were some of your guys' favorite moments?
You want to go first?
I think we had the same moment, though, honestly. It had to be the Kobe. I mean, the Kobe tribute was personally my favorite. I was a big Kobe fan. I am still a big Kobe fan. But with that being said, I realized how close they were, but I didn't realize maybe how much Kobe picked his brain until the whole MJ kind of gave his speech at Kobe's funeral. And then obviously watching the documentary and seeing really how much he impacted just Kobe's career, and being able, like Kobe said, he wouldn't have won those 5 rings without him. It was really cool. That was probably my favorite moment. I think it was yours too. But
yeah, I think in those 2 episodes also, like MJ has to admit a few things that he did that people maybe wouldn't have agreed with. But I think it's interesting to just see his perspective now is still like he is so just accepting of who he is, and if it's going to upset people, then that's how it's going to be. And he knows that he can't please everyone, which I think is interesting from somebody who was such like a world figure, to where everybody expects him to please everybody, but he was able to have kind of that like mentality that I know it's not going to happen, so I'm just going to do what's true to me. And I think that there was a few different instances within those 2 episodes where that happened too, which was a bit controversial, but at the same time just showed more of him and his mindset too, I think.
It's almost real so far with this documentary to see scenes like with Kobe and David Stern, who both passed away earlier this year. And he had a lot of great moments and a lot of great impact in MJ's career. And equally, like you talked about, Kobe's career would not be the same if he didn't have those early interactions with MJ.
Yeah,
exactly.
I know. It also was just weird, like seeing Kobe sitting there talking. It's just so sad because, I mean, I just wish that he was obviously still around, but then also the fact of like, he was so smart and had brought so much to the table too. It's just so unfortunate because you really see it. Even like he was only in there for 2 clips, but he had such an impact on that episode. It's kind of crazy.
No.
Yeah, and it's crazy how young he was when he made those all-star teams, right? Is that you've got the entire all-star East locker room joking about one guy, and they're all talking about Kobe. They aren't talking about anybody else coming out of the West. One of my favorite lines was like, after he's missed the fourth shot, like, I'm not passing him the ball anymore. And I thought it was hilarious because, that was exactly Kobe, right? Is he was going to keep shooting no matter what.
Sure.
He knew he was the best, though. So he's like, why would I pass it, So
Sure.
Yeah.
That's
But then
the
also
Mamba,
always still learning too. Like he already knew he was the best, but he's always just looking to improve too.
Fascinating to see it all. I mean, I was a huge fan of Kobe and I was a huge fan of MJ, but being able to see this all wrapped together in one piece, it just makes me even, I don't know if it's possible, but a bigger fan for both of them. So it was really cool, really special moment to watch.
Let's see here. So favorite moments that come to mind, though, is like his mom having to convince him to go with the Nike sponsorship. Because when you think about how iconic Air Jordans are today, how that Jumpman logo has literally taken off like for entire generations with Michael Jordan, and why he's still, I mean, you could say he's still relevant because he's an NBA owner, but he's the owner of Charlotte. So, we could kind of ignore that.
Yeah.
He's iconic because of what Jumpman is today. I mean, hell, Drake releases Jumpman, and it's probably one of the most popular songs of the year.
For sure.
And
I listen to it at the time. I ain't going to lie.
And every year you still have people shelling out money to get Michael Jordans, and they'll put aside the LeBrons, the Kawhis, all the new generation players for this guy that I know myself. I never got the experience of watching Michael Jordan play like for real.
Yeah.
For the longest time, and why I love this documentary, my only experience with really watching Jordan was Space Jam. Like,
okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the Wizards was mine. Personally, I didn't get to watch one of the Bulls. I was born in 93. So, but yeah, I saw him at the Wizards and I remember that vaguely, but that was really about it for me.
Yeah.
Everyone recognizes his time with the Wizards was a very forgettable time. And if you look at his statistics, like there's nothing too special. I believe he had like one 50-point game mixed in there that everyone talks about. Like, hey, look, Jordan still got it. But at the end of the day, the team never really advanced. I think they were eliminated in the first round both years he was there. So, and
it didn't do much, but it was fun.
And I'm sure they'll talk about that a little bit later in the series too, like his time with the Wizards, episode 10, episode 9. One of the big controversies, it's not a big deal to us now, but like the gambling issue that was brought up in here. I will say this, finding out that he was out till like 2 a.m. the night before a playoff game, regardless of the player, like let's say that was LeBron James or someone, they would just be absolutely skewered and roasted. So I don't think it's incorrect how the media responded during that time to say like, does Michael really like care about this championship if he's really going out to gamble till 2 a.m. in the morning? He just tried to justify like, hey, I was home by 1 or 12, but I think it's kind of like missing the point. It's like you left a whole different city, but that's kind of like characterizes these 90s Bulls when you consider the Rodman episode the week before as well. It's like they could take time off because they were just that damn good. If that's their process to refocus, to recalibrate this team, I just need to take a couple days off to myself and I'll come back and just rock the world, rock New York Nets, putting that fan base in even more misery than they have been. I think that was probably like the domino effect for Nick's sadness right there.
Yeah, I agree. And it was interesting. We watched like Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center after the two episodes yesterday, and they had, or was it today? I don't remember. But Jeff Van Gundy was on talking about coaching and exactly like how they proceeded and how they got to where they were. And basically they were saying like there was a different plan for every single player. Like they were allowing those players to do what they needed to do physically, mentally. Like everybody was kind of allowed to take the breaks when they needed to. And they think he thought that's kind of what led them to success, was because there was the realization that they were going to need mental breaks at certain points or physical breaks at certain points too. So
they had a leash, but it wasn't like they had a lot more leash than a lot more players would have. I think if it was, for example, somebody else other than MJ and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and those kind of players, that kind of talent, that kind of team that's been built for the previous years, I mean, they were on the brink of a dynasty. So I think that Phil Jackson knew a lot more about his own team than me obviously did. 100%.
And to your point, like he let them out on their leash, but he always knew exactly how to rein them back in too, to get them together again and keep them successful. So it was kind of strange, like that he would go out the night before a playoff game, but then just the fact that he was able to just check back in, and obviously there was still like the pressure around him, but he still used that, which was, I think, another overarching theme of like how he created motivation out of literally anything. But like that was his motivation in that game, to literally just crush them.
Yeah, but I mean, if I would have done that before a game, I would have definitely probably been in a lot of trouble.
Like
so,
yeah, exactly.
I can also relate on the other side of that spectrum.
Yeah.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head, right? right, is that these athletes, even though we hold them up on a pedestal and we're always thinking like, oh man, look how amazing, Michael Jordan is and LeBron and all them, they're still human, right? And so even they need time off, just whether it's to go golfing or to go gambling or do whatever. So I was totally on board with Phil Jackson's philosophy. So I coach a youth wrestling team, and there's even times where like the season gets so long that I tell some of our kids, I'm like, hey, take this week off, like go hang out with your family. I'm like, it sucks, like we're gonna miss you at this tournament, but like at the end of the day, I could tell that you're just beat up, you're run down, and you just need time off. And sometimes that's the best thing to do. So I will say I sort of had an issue with the gambling though. It just looks really, really bad, right? Like I would have probably told him like, hey, like save that for after the playoffs.
Yeah, no, 100%. There were definitely some questionable gambling moves that he made. I understand that point, but also I was like, if he has it, like maybe it was that interview that we were watching afterwards, but they were talking about how it's like $10,000 to Jordan is like somebody betting $10. Yeah. And because he has it, he's good for it. I mean, I don't know. I definitely personally, I'm not a big gambler. I would never just throw 10 G's on myself to win a golfing game. Maybe kick a field goal here or there, but that's about it. And so I was really glad that they kind of noted or put a little asterisk into that. It was strictly on himself. It was strictly golfing. He never tried to manipulate the game. He never tried to cheat the game of basketball or do anything like that. So I was glad that they kind of touched on that too.
Yeah, that was good. One of the best scenes that people are still talking about today is throwing the quarters at the wall, like who could get the quarter closer. That one guy suddenly blew up in like popularity. He's become a popular meme himself.
The only guy to ever beat Jordan.
Pretty much. Another thing they addressed, it was kind of like a controversial stance for Jordan at the time was, and there's been a lot of speculation, did he actually say this? Republicans buy shoes too, because a lot of people criticize him. Is he a selfish character? Does he only care about the money? But I think it's more a testament to the fact that what Jordan said, I'm not an activist, I'm an athlete. And, not every public figure, not every athlete necessarily needs to be an activist. Sometimes they just want to do and live their life as is. I mean, I know for ourselves too, on this show, we've taken the stance, we want to just be about the sports. Yeah. All the other stuff, save that for ESPN and whatnot. We're going to focus just on the sports concept itself. And some people will even look at that as a political statement being apolitical. So I was glad that they talked about it, because there has been, like I said, it's been one of those things like, did he actually say that? Did he not? And they put it here in the documentary for all to see.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too that he mentioned like his mom was trying to get him to do something about kind of voicing an opinion in favor of the Democratic candidate that everybody wanted him to kind of back. And he was like, I'm not going to back somebody I don't know, which is a fair, I think, kind of statement. But then also he said he gave money to his, at least, campaign to try and support in that way, which was interesting. I don't think that people probably put much emphasis on that. They focus on that one comment that, like you said, he may or may not have made, but he did try and at least support in some way. But I think that goes back to the media always focusing in on one thing and kind of leaving out details about other things surrounding an event. So I agree. I'm glad they included it just to get his perspective in general on it, but another interesting story outside of just basketball too. Like there's so much going on in his life.
You look at the crowds that would surround his hotel. I guess one big question regarding that is, for everyone here, would you want to live the life of Michael Jordan?
There's pros and cons for sure, but I don't think that I could deal with the constant annoyance of people. Like I like being away from people for sure.
I think being able to influence as many people as he was able to do, I think that's one thing that I would love to obviously be kind of, but literally the only place that you have privacy is your hotel room. I don't know if I could deal with that. And then also nowadays, you're really not in the privacy of your own hotel room if you have a cell phone in your hand. I think it'd be such a different game with social media nowadays with, for example, LeBron James. He's probably one of the top spotlight athletes in our generation right now. And so I don't know, it'd just be such a different concept, but to be able to influence that many people would be fantastic, I think, personally.
It'd be really difficult. So it'd be amazing to have his level of talent at any sport, right? And be a transcendent athlete where people all around the world are looking up to you. But, I think even with the gambling stuff, everybody's got you under such a microscope that any little thing that you do is going to be perceived one way or the other, right? So had he given money to, I want to say, was it Herbert Grant or something like that was the Democratic nominee that you
sounds close. Yeah, sounds close to right.
Yeah, something like that. If he had just come out and said, okay, yeah, I fully support him, then the whole media would have been like, oh, now he's against this person, he doesn't like Republican or whatever. And then if, he even admitted his statement and said, yeah, I said like Republicans buy shoes too. you. And even that was subject to a lot of criticism. So
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. It would be so difficult always living under a microscope where every little thing that you do, every little thing you say is going to be subject to some type of criticism.
Yeah, for sure. You can't meet everybody's expectations. There's like no possible way.
I don't know. I also got really sad because then I was like, man, the media drove Michael Jordan out of sports. Like, just think about if he wouldn't have gotten driven out of sports by the media, what could have been? I mean, how much more excitement could we have gotten to see from him? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't know. I was sad, but also I was like, man, what a tough life. Like, I understand it. I don't blame him at all.
Yeah.
Well, it was either the media or Jerry Krause who, again, just the disrespect that this guy is getting during the documentary. I will say this, because the hot take is everyone to be on Krause, hate on Krause because of the way he's being portrayed so far in this documentary. And yes, there are moments with the coach thing, rather than being there to support his team in the finals and stuff like that. But he did assemble that roster. We can't completely say that he's just a terrible GM. He made the decision to, go out there and get a Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, had the balls to get Rodman despite past shady record and even the dispute with the bad boy Pistons. So you do have to give Jerry Krause at least that. But there was that moment where MJ smoking the cigar and he's like, I can't give you one, it'll stunt your growth. And I'm just like, oh my God, this guy's a savage. MJ had so many savage moments throughout this one, like during the Dream Team stuff where the reporter went up to him and was like, who's taking the last shot between you, Bird, Magic, and everything? Is like, me.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a dumb question.
Yeah, he said that's a dumb question. Like, why would you even ask that? That's obvious.
Yeah, those were just fantastic moments. And then speaking of the Dream Team, because a big subject of controversy this week is, the exclusion of Isiah Thomas. Where do you guys stand on that one? Because Christian Laettner appears to be the only one where you could argue, let's take him out, let's put Isiah Thomas. But a lot of people are either taking the stance, well, it is kind of Isaiah's fault. He did rub Magic the wrong way. He rubbed Bird the wrong way. And he rubbed, of course, MJ the wrong way. And then there's some, of course, taking the stance, well, his talent was so far superior to these other guys. He was a two-time champion. How could you exclude him? With that said, where are you guys kind of leaning on that subject?
I think we agree on this one, but for the most part, I was on the side of MJ and Magic and Bird because personally, when you're looking at a team and you're going to war with your brothers and you look over and you don't trust one of your brothers that you're going to war with, things get kind of sketchy and then you don't really perform as well. And I was in agreement with it. I thought it was a smart move because at the end of the day, they won. And arguably that was one of the most stacked teams of all time, personally. But so no, I agreed with it. I think it's tough to kind of say that because he is so talented. Like MJ said, behind Magic, he was the second best point guard of all time. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword too, but I was fine with it. I thought it was a smart choice.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just as a coach putting together a team, like I know there's a lot of rumors that MJ was the one who just said, no, he can't be on the team. But I think it's pretty much been proven up until this point that that's not actually how it kind of played out, that he was not ever actually asked, like, do you want him on the team or not? And he said, no, like that's not actually what happened. So I think if you're a coach looking and you know for sure you want Magic and you know for sure you want MJ and you know for sure you want Bird, would you ever add somebody who none of those three people like to your team? Like, I just think the obvious answer is no. So I agree with it just because you're wanting team chemistry, you're wanting to go represent the United States. That's like a wild card to throw somebody in there who nobody likes on the team. So I agree with it just from a personality perspective and just kind of like what was going on ego-wise amongst all those people. But talent-wise, obviously, you would think he should be on it. But
talent-wise, without a doubt.
That was the exact point that I was thinking of, is that from USA Basketball's perspective, that is probably the best thing that they could have done. Because if they had said, hey, we don't care about your guys' opinions, we're just getting the best team together, then all those other guys possibly could have said, all right, kick rocks, like I'm out of here. And then we don't have a dream team at all. So yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the competitor in me, I would have been like, hey, let's get anybody that's got talent. Like I'm down to bring our best team. But I could see like those guys have such big egos and they're the best in the world. So if they just don't like you, they don't need to play with you. They
you're out.
Like, nope, screw you guys. But yeah, so I agree with that point in that USA Basketball and the coaching staff, they made absolutely the right decision to grow the United States international team. They had to do what they had to do. And if that means you got to leave a really good player out, you got to do it.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But how about how Jordan, and speaking of that team, though, how Jordan and Scottie Pippen took it upon themselves to give welcome to the NBA rookie moment to Tony Kukoc, who ended up being one of the instrumental parts in their second three-peat.
Yeah.
I love the interview. Yeah, he said, I had no idea why they did what they did to me.
Yeah. He's like, I've never even met them and I don't even know what happened. But I get it at the same time is like, I would not have done that personally.
Jerry
but
Krause, blame him, man.
Yeah.
He started the whole thing.
I mean,
How petty, how Petty level is it that these guys are just like, man, just to prove Jerry Krause wrong, we're just going to go wreck his draft pick. It's like, guys,
not
a smart move, but I guess if arguably the GOAT, I guess you can do that. I would have never personally done that. That's like extreme hazing to the max level, to the point where they don't even want to join your brotherhood.
Yeah.
But
I think it also presented a good opportunity for Kukoc to come back and prove them wrong and prove kind of why he actually is capable of being part of their like master team, because he came back. Obviously his team still lost, but he had a really great second performance, and clearly it kind of changed the opinion of them regardless of what Krause thought. So as much as it was crappy in the first game, at least he had and actually took the opportunity to like change their opinions of him in the second game.
And the NBA had to feel so easy to him when he came to the NBA. I mean, he literally played against the best of the best in his first game against some NBA talent. All right, the first game he kind of got his ass handed to him. But the second time he played, he did his thing. So the NBA had to kind of say, or the best NBA talent on that dream team was probably like, all right, I mean, this guy coming over, he's going to be nice. He's going to be something special potentially. I mean, I think MJ said that, something along the lines of that anyways.
Yeah, and like Croatia in the 90s wasn't nearly what some of these international teams are today. I mean, one of the first episodes we ever had on the show, we were talking about how the U.S. basketball team sucked in the WBC, and it's just like, you look at that and it's like the international play, because of the impact of this dream team, has just been skyrocketing ever since. And now you look around the league and you have Dirk, you have Luka, you have these guys that are just tearing it up, and even some of our guys
now deciding to go play somewhere else.
Even some of our guys are going to other countries now, and it's insane the impact, the growth that it's had. We bring up Yao Ming and stuff like that. Man, the game skyrocketed after these guys put that team together. If it costs Isiah Thomas, MJ, we know who had the bigger impact, So with that said, rating system on this, guys. So our rating system's a traditional 5-star, but we have different names for it. So strikeout, that's a 1-star. Foul tip, 2. Texas leaguer, base hit, that's a 3. 4 is warning track power, and 5 is a home run. Where you guys got a rating for these 2 episodes? And remember, 5 is perfect. Can't get any better.
What was number 4?
Warning track power. Like, it's back, it's to the track, it's off the top of the wall.
I think I'd go with that option just because I kind of, to your point earlier, where it kind of bounces around a few different times and covers off on a few miscellaneous subjects where I think they kind of had to fit them in within some episode. I do like how the previous episodes were a little bit more like cohesive on one specific topic or one person. So I would say it wasn't quite a home run on these 2, but still really, really good and insightful.
Yeah, I think the Kobe one was a home run for me just because personally being able to see Kobe again and see him talk about the influence of MJ, got to give Don a home run. I would love to see more of Kobe. I don't know if they had any more footage, but that would have been spectacular. But the 6, I'd say probably 4, 100%. I also got to ask you guys a question after I hear y'all's rating because I want to talk about the Horace Grant thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, for sure. Well, let's see here. Dre, where are you going with this?
I'm going to give it a base hit, just a 3-star. And the reason I do that is because some of the other episodes that I enjoyed more, I gave a 4-star. So I'm like, I can't be as high as them. So it has to be the next one down. Yeah, I did really enjoy, the Kobe stuff just because, that was my boy. I'm a Lakers fan. But then also seeing like the Nike stuff, like you mentioned earlier, JuJu, is that had Nike never gotten Jordan, and Jordan had never have been as good as he was, Nike's not a $1 billion brand today, and so it was cool seeing that history and how that all went down. But the episodes did bounce around a lot, as you guys mentioned, and so that was the stuff that I didn't like.
So let's see here. So sliding scale, I gave the first round episodes a home run. I slid down to a warning track power for the next 2. Now, this one, I kind of agree with Dre here a little bit on that 3 middle of the pack thing, because although there was great subjects in here that they covered, the fact that they were all over the place with it kind of did raise some concern. And I did listen to a great point on some of the more difficult subject matter. You have to remember that Michael Jordan had to approve everything that was put in this documentary. So we can't take everything as fact, and we do have to consider the part that some of the more objective stuff was probably cut or left on the cutting room floor. And that's why I guess I'm going to lean with Dre here. It's a Texas leaguer. It's a bloop single. Hey, sometimes a bloop and a blast can get it done, and this can still end up being a home run as a series overall for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't argue. It did bounce around a lot. I agree.
Yeah.
You had to remember bits and pieces, and a lot of it, I actually didn't even know all of the stuff about the Adidas and Nike deal. So that was new information for me.
Yeah. I mean, if you told me that like just one episode was purely Dream Team stuff, and then maybe one episode was purely dedicated to the Portland and the Phoenix series, maybe that would have been a better way to structure it, to format it. But the fact that literally that first episode, if you had to describe it, you have to hit on like 3 or 4 different subjects before you can. I think they fit in the Republicans buy shoes, initial thing with the Nikes, the U.S. basketball thing, his little thing with Reebok. All of that was just one episode, and the Portland series was in there as well.
Yeah, it was a ton.
And the Kobe stuff was in the first
and the
episode.
Kobe,
Kobe was part of that too. So yes, you
Yeah.
had like 7 different subjects in one, and then the second one was more like just the Phoenix series. So maybe combine those two. Yeah, that's about where I'm at.
Yeah,
No, I agree. That's a great point.
yeah, that makes sense.
All right. What about the horse?
So yeah, I do want to talk about it. So the Horace Grant MJ debacle with the media. What do you guys think took place?
Oh, you mean like if he was actually giving away insights to the guy who wrote the book? Do you think that he was the one who was giving away the inside scoop?
Well, if you ask Pippen and Jordan, they'll probably see Jared Krause was doing it. Jared Krause was saying he was fat and like not allowed to smoke cigars and stuff like that. But no, I mean, there has to be a whistleblower, and it's like the Eagles stuff last year with Alshon Jeffrey. Was he the one throwing Carson Wentz under the bus? It's like, Horace, like you do see those moments where he had the, oh, woe is me face. And the fact that he was so close to that author, it's awfully fishy, but maybe it's too convenient.
Yeah. And also, like you said, MJ got to approve everything that was shown. So there might be some things that we don't know that he didn't want to get shown that could have potentially changed the way we had our outlook on Horace. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in that MJ, he was the one that thought it was Horace anyways. So, of course, he's going to say in the show, like, oh, it was Horace. Like, come on now. So, yeah, I am a little bit skeptical of that. I mean, Horace himself will say, of course, I don't think anybody would ever tell the truth if it was them.
Right.
But he says it wasn't him. So, I don't know. I guess this is where I deviate from Jordan a little bit. I'm not totally convinced that it was Horace, and I don't know if we'll ever know the truth, right? Maybe on somebody's deathbed they'll admit it.
Maybe.
It was me.
Yeah.
The long-awaited answer that we just all needed to know.
Yep, exactly.
An interesting thought about like Jordan, like the whole reason behind him releasing the Last Dance documentary in the first place. And reportedly he came to the decision to do it after the 2016 finals when LeBron came back down from 3-1, which is basically, again, you talk about Jordan being a little petty. That's a little petty. One of his rationales was he didn't want to do it until he felt like he was done. Like his career had tapped out. There was not going to be another Jordan headline moving forward, which is a shame if somehow the Charlotte Hornets managed to win an NBA championship. Not banking on it, but, if it happened, it would be cool to have in there. But that was his reason. He felt like this is it. This is going to be the last legacy of him. But, in 20 years, we could get another MJ doc, like one that's objective without him here. They kind of like, actually filter out some stuff. And maybe then we'll get some true answers on stuff like this. But, for now, we'll take it for what it is. It's pure entertainment. And it's definitely made my Sunday nights. Now, speaking of something that made my Friday night, E60 released their documentary on Project 11, which is a documentary dedicated to the recovery, the rehab process for one Alex Smith, currently on the Washington Redskins roster still, trying to make a comeback in 2020. The odds are up in the air of him being able to do it, but he looks capable. Now, this was a brutal documentary to watch. Like, if you have any aspirations of being in the medical field, this is definitely one of those ones where you have to look at that leg and think, do I want to touch that? When
It's a good test run.
Those images, like basically war victim things, and that was one of the things they mentioned in the like stories. Like his leg was basically missing when that flesh-eating bacteria got in there and took it to town, and they had to just keep cutting and cutting and cutting. I couldn't imagine how excruciating that was. And here's a great question for you guys. Obviously, as a couple, I'm gonna put you on the spot here because Alex's wife said it during the documentary. She was ready to cut it off, go without the leg here. So I'm just saying, if Chad here, JJ Watt's coming at you and roll the leg a little bit here. Where are you feeling? What's going on here?
You just chop it off. Like, you just get rid of it. That's the end of the story.
It's gone.
I just think.
We'll wake up legless. Less leg, I guess.
I just think, like, at that point, I can understand why she's like, look, I don't even care if he can play football. We will make it work. There's ways that he can still walk and move, but I want to be walking or wheeling him out of alive. So I can totally understand that. You have to prioritize at that point. And I think she obviously prioritized being able to spend her life with him over him being able to have his leg, which would be a hard decision no matter what. Like, I made it sound like I'd be like, oh yeah, just cut it off, no problem. But I think it would just be at that point. It's like,
she's lying, it'd be easy.
You're choosing life over leg, which I would choose life for sure.
It's so you can't run away from her, Chad.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm stuck. We're good. No, but I agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, she picked to have a husband and a father rather than a football player. So luckily, it didn't come to that, and he still has his leg. But I can totally understand that point.
But then it was interesting too, because he ended up having to make that decision for himself too a little bit later, because they were trying to say like the process of rebuilding this leg is going to be super extensive. Like you're going to have to remove stuff from other parts and like rebuild it. And there's no guarantee that it's actually going to be functional. So like, what did he want to choose too? And he made the same decision to choose his leg. I mean, at that point, it wasn't a matter of life. It was a matter of like functionality, I would say, or probably comfort too. I think there would probably be a lot more pain associated with having to try and rebuild it. But I mean, he had to be kind of faced with a similar decision too, which was interesting to see him work through that choice too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would have had the surgery in a heartbeat, but I guess nowhere near as a comparison. Yeah,
oh, okay.
It's not really a comparison at all. But I had hip surgery midway through my college career, and I could have made the decision to not have hip surgery and just not kick, or have hip surgery and come back and kick. Obviously, chose to have the surgery, came back and kicked, and had a good career. So I can 100% relate that. You know, at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do, because you're going to wake up with that drive and that passion and just that in your head telling you like, man, I had more in the tank. Like I left it quarter full or quarter empty, if you will. So I can understand it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, like one of the things that we mentioned before when it comes to life after football is a lot of these guys, you know, they tie their whole identity. I mean, Chad, I'm sure like in many ways, you probably like really like tied your identity to football at one point in your life. I mean, even just as from a high school wrestler perspective, like athletics was a big part of my thing. And when I got into college, I was like, that void was filled. So like when you're Alex and you're deciding on, if I lose this leg, this is literally a part of me that can never return, no matter what I can do. Even if they put a prosthetic there, there is no chance in hell that I will be allowed to play NFL football again. So that like thought, I'm sure, was just racing through his head. And some would say like, is that selfish in a way? Like, what if you did pass, and what if, you know, you didn't get a chance to see your wife and your kids again? But I do think that in a way, if he lost that part of him, it would have been killing him just as much, you know, as if he actually passed. And I do think that that's like something that you can't underrate. And for me, it's kind of like weird being a Niners fan myself. So when he mentioned stuff like the rough Bay Area times, I lived it. And I'm always thinking about it. And one thing that we're actually going to talk about on my other show, 49 Reasons to Listen, is like, what if the Niners decided to keep Alex Smith versus Colin Kaepernick? What would have happened? So, you know, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy the route that his career has had to take to be replaced with the Niners like he was after only missing really one game. And then to end up in Kansas City, have a nice little run there, but still kind of like hit that wall, hit that like ceiling of where his talent could legitimately take him compared to, well, let's face it, the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl this year. And then he got
replaced by, one of the greatest, potentially. Yeah. Could be one of the greatest quarterbacks.
And then with Washington, you know, he has them at a 6-3 record. They're leading the division. Washington might make the playoffs that year. And then it just all comes apart. Yeah. And one of the insane statistics about this, same date as Joe Theismann in the same stadium. Like, how is that even possible? I mean, people always talk about like history repeating itself. Funny, you know, I'm looking through this just from a sports perspective. In 1919, you of course have the Chicago Black Sox scandal. Well, we're here talking Houston Astros in 2019. And then in 2020, you know, they're dealing with all this stuff with the Spanish flu. And here we are dealing with coronavirus. And then look at Alex Smith here, Joe Theismann and his career a few years later.
History repeats itself. Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I think both left tackles were out.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing to me that both of these starting left tackles were not in the game when that happened. So it's just weird how things like that kind of stack up on one another. But, yeah, I mean, it was fascinating to watch. I also will say I wonder if whenever he was going into that surgery, I'm sure the doctor said you have a 5% chance, you know, that you could pass. You have a 95% chance that you'll be able to walk out of here with at least somewhat of a surgically repaired leg. So I do kind of wonder if the percentages were, you know, kind of helping him out.
When we talk about percentages for the most part, if we're being honest, are kind of bullshit. I mean, when we talk about like from a fantasy football perspective, if a guy's feeling 70% versus feeling 80%, like what's that difference? How do you know what's 70 versus 80? You're either 100% you can play or you're not, right? Which is 0%.
Yeah. And well, more or less meant like 100%, like 95% you'll be able to walk out here live, and like 5% you could pass away. I feel like that's a I don't know. I feel like it's a more telling sign because I don't think anybody's going to go into surgery and say you have a 100% chance to live.
No.
Well, true, but like even from, I'll relate this to a personal story. Like my grandpa in construction for many years, right? Falls off a roof, breaks his hip. Doctors tell him there's a chance you may never walk again, right? And he's walking again in 2 years. Sometimes you just like what you're getting told at the day of, like there's always a chance. There's a chance either way. There's a chance, I could walk out the store and get hit by a car, or JJ Watt comes out here and breaks my leg. Yeah. I feel, one thing I'll say, I hate the JJ Watt's a part of this. I
know. Like nicest, best, one of the best players in the NFL. And of course, he's like the person who, not intentionally, obviously, but caused all this. And obviously, it's kind of crazy to think too, like he walked off and asked his coaches, like, what happened? Did he get a concussion? Like he walked off not even knowing what had just happened.
Yeah, he just thought he got sacked.
Yeah.
If it was just like, Buster Posey in 2012 and like Tim Murphy runs him over and breaks his ankle, then, it would probably fade a little bit easier. But, knowing that it's a fallow star, well, I wouldn't say Alex Smith's a Hall of Famer, but a Hall of Famer in JJ Watt, it's going to be one of those things like those highlight clips we're always going to see. But it could be a great highlight if Alex Smith can come back and play NFL football. If you told me that he was healthy and the Redskins had their choice of him versus Dwayne Haskins versus Kyle Allen, Alex Smith is starting day one for them. It's hard to speculate, but do you think it is realistic for Alex to play this coming year?
I don't know if it's realistic. I don't know. I'm just like also on the standpoint where I would hate for him to play and then something just happens. Like you just never know. At the end of the day, I mean, if he gets tackled the wrong way, I mean, it's the NFL. They're grown men. And so I would love for him to play and be able to play, but also at the same time, I'm like, man, like you got a blessing. You have 2 legs. You can run around with your kids. Like at the end of the video, he was being able to cut and shift and play with his children. So I don't know. I hope that he maybe gets a chance to play, but I also am like, let's not see it happen.
Yeah, and I don't think it's realistic for him to play this season.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like just at the end of last year that he finally got that big metal thing off his leg after like 280 days or something insane of having that on. So I think there will be a lot more recovery involved after getting that off too, which obviously you can tell he's going through it and he's made a ton of progress. But we're talking like within the next few months. I don't know. I think that's a little bit
I could see the next year. And I think was he targeting, I don't remember exactly. Was he targeting this season or was he targeting the next season? I forget what he was.
I think if Alex had his way, he would just play as soon as he's
tomorrow, honestly, I'm sure.
And I think most guys who like play a competitive sport, it's like, okay, I can run, I can play, that's kind of like the one and one there. Like Cam, I can play. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Right. Dre, what's your take on like Alex Smith's like road to recovery?
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't get to see the documentary, but I saw some like the pictures and the photos, like when his leg's all black and stuff like that. It's disgusting. And you ask the question, like, if you're his wife, do you choose to chop off his leg? Like, if you're his wife, do you choose to let him go back to play football? Because if I'm his wife, I'm like, there's no way you're doing that ever again. So I think it is a valid question. Does he play again? My worry for him is like when guys go through that traumatic of an injury, I just think they're not all there psychologically. Like I know he's gonna say like, hey, I want to play as quick as possible, like put me out there, full pads, let's go. But then when you see a linebacker running at you, right? Like you see JJ Watt coming at you again. Like you're gonna hesitate, you're gonna freeze up, and you might not be playing as well as you normally do. And then in those moments is usually when you get hurt, right? Is instead of doing what you've done in the past, you freeze, you shift the other way or something, and then, you see another injury.
No, that's a great point. I mean, if I saw JJ Watt coming at me again after he did that to my leg the first time, I would probably just sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just fall. Yeah, it's over.
I'm out. Take it down. I'm cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's my thought on it. It's like, how many Alex Smiths do we really see? Like his injury was, I guess if you were live in the 80s, twice in a lifetime, but it doesn't happen all that much. I mean, guys get banged up all the time. We see ACL injuries all the time, but it was a rarity. So to say to Alex Smith, you go out there, you're going to break your leg again, is kind of like a little bit of a fallacy because, we're talking about percentages, chances. There's a chance that he never experiences another injury again in his career. And with the way that they protect quarterbacks in today's game, there's also a chance that he doesn't nearly experience that kind of contact. Who knows? Maybe the next year or what the Redskins did in the draft was good enough to build up their offensive line to where he could just have an Andrew Luck type season and barely get touched. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of what ifs. The only way that we're going to know for sure is if Alex Smith puts on a uniform and the trainer says you're good enough to play. And I would love to see it. Again, coming off the bad times in the Bay Area, I'm like one of the biggest Alex Smith fans after watching this documentary. It's hard not to root for a guy who's been through this much. So
another person who kept like insane perspective during all of it too. Like to be able to say like there's still people who would want to be in my shoes, or the quote his wife said that he said in the middle of like basically about to lose his leg and he's still be like able to keep that perspective. It's hard not to be just fans of the person himself, like you said, but then obviously he's a really great player too. So you want the best for him, and if the best for him means him playing again, then I guess we'd be all for it and just hope for the best.
Hey guys, this is JuJu Talk Sports, and I'm here to talk about Manscaped.com. Now, Manscaped is the #1 men's grooming technology, the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. They have precision-engineered tools for the family jewels. The Perfect Package 3.0 comes with the new improved Lawnmower 3.0. It's waterproof, it's cordless, and it also comes with a ton of liquid formulations to round out your manscaping routine. This third-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge blade to prevent manscaping accidents. Millions of balls around the world are now nick-free thanks to Manscaped's advanced skin care technology. And of course, let's not forget about the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant to prevent moisture, kind of like keep everything all fresh down there. Subscribers get a new replacement blade refill for the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer delivered to your door every 3 months. Make sure your trimmer always stays fresh and clean. For a limited time offer, subscribers get not 1, but 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag and the patented high-performance anti-chafing boxer briefs. Get 20% off, plus free shipping in with the code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Do yourself a favor and always use the right tools for the job. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping and handling at manscaped.com, and use SLUMP. Manscaped is the best when it comes to men's grooming. Get yourself the Joe Burrow of trimmers, the Lawnmower 3.0. Enjoy the rest of the show. All right, guys. Well, let's talk about some quick headlines here. So, Don Shula, famous, legendary coach, arguably the greatest coach of all time, passed away today. Most career wins. Belichick's creeping up on him on third on the list. But one fascinating stat about Don Shula: 33 years of coaching, 31 winning seasons. Some other kind of like headlines. Of course, Andy Dalton is now officially with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I did call that one literally the day before he signed. I think it's a great decision because let's say that this contract negotiation with Dak doesn't work out. Andy Dalton's a good backup option to have. In fact, Andy Dalton with talent in his career, when the Bengals in that, I think it was 2014, had like pieces around him, that was a dark horse Super Bowl team. Now, they came up short in the playoffs, which has been one of the criticisms Andy has had to eat over his career. But, you know, you tell me you're giving him CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott. With Andy Dalton, I feel like more than comfortable saying he could be a fringe playoff team. So that's why if you're Dak Prescott, you are praying to the Lord himself that you do not get injured this year. This is a very big year for you, because if you get hurt and Andy Dalton comes in and has success or outshines you in any way, that spotlight that's been on you for the last 2 years of like, is he a good enough? Is he a franchise quarterback? Just grows brighter and brighter, and in free agency, potentially, that's going to hurt you. That $35 million, $40 million pipe dream, that window closes up significantly.
I was just going to say, it's interesting to see that they paid him $3 million guaranteed with $7 million total potential when they only paid Dak $2.1 million last year. And it dropped significantly the previous years before that. I understand he's on a rookie deal. But with that being said, it's just kind of shocking at times. And then I also do want to say, I think it's a fantastic pickup, though, because like you said, Dak now has a lot of pressure on him. He also now realizes that, hey, look, if I keep being stubborn, I might not have a job here next year. So
there's like an actual legitimate backup option, whereas before there wasn't. So I think there's another stat too that said like when Andy Dalton's defenses held the other team to under 20 points, he was like 30 something and 8 in his career. So it's like if you have a defense to be able to complement his offense, like he's actually super successful. So I agree, like it's a dangerous pickup for Dak's perspective, and then a super smart piece of leverage for the Cowboys organization.
Jerry Jones grabbed that power back a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's really smart on Andy Dalton's part. I think it's really smart on the Cowboys' part. And then the only one it really sucks for is Dak, for all the points you guys mentioned. And that's the thing, is if Andy does ball out this year because Dak decides to hold out or Dak gets hurt, he can re-sign with the Cowboys, or he could say, hey, now I'm one of the highest touted quarterbacks available on the market next year. Just because there was a lot of free agents that already signed this season, or if Dak plays the whole season and he has the freedom next free agency, next offseason to still be like, hey, I'm available. And I'm sure there would be another team that would pick him up again. So I think it's the perfect situation for Dalton, as well as the Cowboys. They've got all the leverage now on Dak's part. So we'll see if Dak steps up. I'm sure that now with, a sufficeable quarterback behind him, he's not going to hold out anymore and be like, okay, I've got to make sure these guys know I'm not replaceable.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Smart move by Jerry Jones. That's all I can say on that one. Another big headline today is the NFL officially announced there will be no international games this year. So the London series, potential games in China, Mexico, all that good stuff, gone, done. It was to be expected. COVID has been the biggest bitch of 2020, if we're just being frank about it. The fact that we're not going to have some games, I mean, if you're Jacksonville and Chad Kahn, you're probably a little bit disappointed as you're thinking about moving your team across the pond, as they say. Yeah. But do you guys have any more takes as far as it goes? I mean, we're right now in this position where are we even going to have fans in there? There's the entire state of California. They're talking about not even having live sports. So potentially, if you're the Rams, you're the Chargers playing in a different state this year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's probably almost to the benefit of the NFL not to do international games, especially this year. Like even in the previous years, some of the international games have caused them trouble. Like they've had to reschedule them, and especially like the Mexico games, there's been issues with the field. Like they always have so many issues, I feel like, when they're trying to take the games international. So this year, I think it's not only will they probably not be able to make it happen, but I think it's just a smart move to not have to deal with that either. But then as far as sports, like I think I saw it was maybe the Dolphins or some team in Florida was talking about how they're going to plan on having fans, but there's going to have to be distance in order to like check your tickets into the game, and only certain seats are going to be sold. Like they put together this whole plan of still being able to have fans there. I think fans will be willing to show up. I don't think it's a matter of that so much, but just how different it's going to look if and when it does happen. I don't know how that's really going to be feasible.
Would you guys go to a game if they allowed fans? For example, if like Miami said, all right, we're going to implement this new thing and get popcorn,
you
beer,
have like
whatever.
a designated time.
Would y'all go?
Game or
Well, this is probably not the best question for me to answer, considering that before the world shut down, I was actually at the final weekend of XFL games. Got to see the Roughnecks and the Seattle Dragons. While one of the Seattle Dragons players happened to be diagnosed with COVID-19. So I guess the answer is yes, I would go, because technically I already have went.
All right, so now knowing what you know and experiencing that, would you go nowadays if they reopened it, or would you be hesitant?
Here's the problem that I think that we have to unfortunately face as a culture, as a society, when it comes to COVID-19. I mean, when they're talking about second waves, they're talking about like us still having it in May. I think it coming to the point where some of us will have to make the decision without a vaccine. Like, are we just going to have to risk it and just risk getting it? Because, I mean, it's not going away anytime soon. At this point, like, how far can we really live the way we're living currently?
Everybody's definitely putting their lives on hold, like 100% for the sake of this. And obviously it makes sense. But then, like you said, if there's not going to be a vaccine until next year, like, is it even feasible to continue to be putting everybody's lives on hold for the next 6 months? Like, I don't really know if that's possible, but I don't know. It just puts everybody in a very weird position. And I think it's going to be like what you said, where you're going to just have to prioritize the ways in which you go back out into the world. Because for some people, going to a football game might be the priority to go back into normal life. But everybody's just going to have to prioritize how they get back out into the world, I think. Because you're not going to be able to go do everything that you did before. But, I mean, life's going to kind of have to continue at some point in some way.
Yeah, see, I differ from JuJu. I agree that eventually we're going to have to start getting back to normal in some way. But me personally, I think if COVID is still a thing by next football season, even if there are stadiums that are open, I still want to do my part to avoid spreading it as far as possible. So I would feel awful if like I got it because I chose to go to a football game and then I spread it to my family, possibly like my grandmother I see on a constant basis. Yeah. I feel awful if she got sick, and unfortunately could possibly pass away from that, right? So
when you could
I think I would
happily sit on the couch and watch it.
Yeah, exactly. They're all going to be televised.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not saying we should rush into it, but I'm also saying like we're starting to hit that threshold. Like we're starting to hit that breaking point as a society where it's like, how can we go about this? Because unlike in other nations, we can't have necessarily the same response. Like you look at how it was game handled in like provinces like China. It's like we can't seal people in their house. And it's a long ways away from that vaccine. If you listen to everything that Fauci and every expert is saying, we're looking at realistic a year and a half. We've been here a month or month and a half, and people are losing their minds. So,
yeah, I think the other unfortunate piece too is people are doing it already, taking matters into their own hands, like making the decision even when the decision isn't advised. So I think to your point, like some people are already doing it anyways. And then also to your point, Dre, is like if you could do your part and you can be a person who can remove themselves from the situations, and I think it's the right thing to do. I know it's not a feasible option for everyone, but if it is, then the people should be taking that option. Whereas some people, it is a feasible option and they're going out anyways. I don't think that's the right move at all.
So moving kind of off that, let's see. So the last couple things we're going to touch on here. So, Dre, there was actually a story that came out this week that the Steelers are planning on not re-signing JuJu Smith-Schuster and even potentially moving off James Conner too. So as a Steelers fan, how are you feeling about this potentially? The way I see it is the Steelers have been a wide receiver factory, so it does give them a little bit more flexibility in doing this. And the last receiver they paid, well, let's just say that it didn't go so well. So
we actually talked about it on the podcast today.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So Dre, how are you feeling about this move?
I'm a little bit nervous. I think I'm just nervous from the offensive standpoint anyways. I think so much runs through Ben. And part of why I think we've been such a good wide receiver factory, as you put it, JuJu, is that we've had Ben, who has been, an all-star level talent, right? And an all-pro talent. He's definitely going into the Hall of Fame one day. But I think if we get rid of JuJu and we don't have a good quarterback behind Ben, I think we're going to be in a world of hurt. Now, I know the Steelers, they sort of built their dynasties or their Super Bowl teams off of, we're going to have a really good defense and then we're going to have a lot through the running game. But then if James Conner is also not there, right, then I'm like, well, what are we doing on offense? So I am a little bit worried. I think part of it is JuJu wasn't as productive when he was the number one option. And I think he really did benefit from having Antonio Brown on the other side. He was the one that would always be double teamed, and that opened JuJu up, right, for a lot of those passes from Ben. And now that everybody knows, okay, Smith-Schuster is the only one here, everybody's double teaming him now, and he's not able to create that separation and contend for those balls that he was normally. And some of it was we just had awful quarterback play last season, right, as Big Ben went down and we had to rely on Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges. But I just worry that it's a weird concoction of, hey, your quarterback is really old, and so if you get rid of one of his best targets, does that force Big Ben to basically say, hey, I'm also out, I'm quitting? And then, our running back game is also a little bit, shaky at the moment. So then we just have this really bad offensive situation.
Yeah, it definitely is concerning when you're talking about moving off a guy that's so young, has so much potential. But I do think that JuJu has a little bit of clout behind his name, and people are going to come at the expectation to pay him as a wide receiver one. But if the production's not there, if the health isn't there, and everything else, I don't think you could realistically do that as the Steelers. And I think the biggest thing we've learned about wide receivers over the years is they're a great spice in the stew, but they're not the stew. Ben Roethlisberger, what they do as offensive line, that's the stew. That's what pieces it all together, and that's why the Steelers have been the way they are. And it's hard to justify paying any wide receiver, really. Like, I think the same way we talk about running backs is kind of like one of those ways that we should be really talking about the wide receiver position, because name a big wide receiver contract that's really worked out if you're not talking about a physical freak like, Julio or, let's face it, Odell's contract has been horrible, whether he's with the Giants or the Browns.
Yeah, I think Michael Thomas is one that would definitely have paid off. I think obviously the connection he has with Drew Brees is pretty insane. So I think he's one that's like you said, it's a reliable source though. Like you can go to him in any situation and he'll be there. So, but other than that, there are a lot of like high profile receivers who are basically a waste of money. So that's why I think when people gave like Christian McCaffrey so much crap for getting such a big contract, but at the end of the day, like that offense actually does kind of revolve around him. So I think it should be more about the value he brings to the team rather than the position that he plays. And I think we pay a lot of receivers a lot more than they deserve just because they're, high profile receivers, but they're not actually worth the value they bring.
It turns into a toxic relationship at some points too, where it's like we feel the need to get this guy the ball in spite of him not necessarily being the best course to win the game. Like, I think probably the biggest thing that separates a lot of teams, like, look at what Brady's been able to do. Look at what Aaron Rodgers has been able to do over the years. They don't necessarily have a guy that's a number one, or he's their number one, but if he goes to another team, he falls short. They've just been able to turn like no-name receivers into something over the years because, again, they just know the secret sauce. They know what gets things going. It's nice to throw in a little cumin. It's nice to throw in a little lemon pepper every now and then. But for the most part, like, you need the proper cook to be able to make that work. All right, guys. So last question for y'all. We ask all our guests this. We had an identical twin set a couple weeks ago that had to answer this at the same time. Favorite sports movie? I'm going to put you guys on a 3, 2, 1 to answer at the same time because I'm going to be interested to see what these answers are here.
Oh, man, I got like 3.
All righty. So the countdown begins now. 3, 2, 1.
Remember the Titans.
Oh! Dude, you were going to say that.
You guys do belong together, like fate, destiny. Remember the Titans. Get some.
Either that or Coach Carter. Coach Carter's close.
Hey, mad props here because the Twins, like I said, they were off. They would not have that, like, twin sensibilities.
The twin connection. They don't
that
have
twin connection there. But
hey, after 9 years.
After 9 years, it is built in there. Okay, Remember the Titans. Great movie.
What is y'all's favorite?
Yeah, I was going to say, what about y'all?
Ours? So mine is Major League.
Okay.
I love the characters. I love the comedy. It doesn't matter if this is showing at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. I could sit down and watch Major League for a couple hours. Dre, it might be a different one from last week.
I know, yeah. So I would say last week that it always changes. So every single month I'm like, oh, this is my new favorite sports movie. No, Remember the Titans is a really good one. That's always one of my all-time favorites. I'm a really big fight fan, so I like the first Creed, and then I like the Warrior.
Yeah.
Warriors, man. One of my all-time faves. That's a great choice. I completely forgot about that.
It's one of my favorite stories.
I probably rank Rocky ahead of both those just because, it's
Rocky.
I mean, over the Creed movie, I mean, like, you come on. You don't
Rocky's
have
technically though, so
yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, you don't have Creed without Rocky. I mean, literally, that's the basis of the movie. Him
exactly
to train him. So
for sure.
That is true. So JuJu, real quick though, is I think why I don't like Rocky as much is because Julian and I, we both wrestled together in high school. We played sports together, and our wrestling coach literally every day would blast the Rocky soundtrack like nonstop, and that's all we would work out to. So I think ever since then, I'm like, nope, not watching Rocky, never again.
That's like the most cliche soundtrack to like bust out in the middle of the locker room for a wrestling team, I feel like.
Yeah.
To that point, though, he didn't play the Rocky 1 soundtrack. He played the Rocky 4 soundtrack. Maybe you just don't like Rocky 4, but you like Rocky 1. Now, there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of variety in Rocky. Some people like their, Apollo Creed. Some people love themselves, some Ivan Drago, Clubber Lang. I mean,
hey, shout out. That's old school right there.
As far as like we were talking about this, no one loves Tommy Gunn. That's the only thing that all Rocky fans can agree about. I mean, even,
common ground.
Yeah,
I agree.
Even the 6th one, Rocky Balboa, wasn't that bad. For a 60-year-old fighting Mason Dixon, he was all right antagonist.
You can never get mad at another Rocky, in my personal opinion. It's just they're always it's Rocky. It's Rocky.
Exactly. I mean, even the Academy agrees. They're giving awards out there. So, Dre, you just got to stop hating on the classics here. All right.
I'll give them some more thought, JuJu, just for you.
You got a lot of time to watch them now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's all I can do. So,
Chad, Steph, go ahead and tell the people, the Slumpbuster Nation, where they can listen to you, where they can find you, and how they can support you guys, because, I've enjoyed having this conversation. I hope we can do it again someday soon. And I hope that our audience finds you guys because of this.
Yeah, I hope so as well. And also, we need to get you guys on the podcast. That'd be an awesome episode as well. But to find us, I'm pretty sure we're almost on every single podcast streaming platform available.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know.
It is every single one.
Maybe 1 or 2 that we're not on, but almost every single one that everybody uses to listen to anyways. And then in terms of social media, we have a Facebook page and an Instagram, and they're just GG Talk Sports.
Yeah, and when you're searching the podcast world, just search a guy and a girl talk sports, and you'll find it.
Sounds great. All right, guys. So Slumpbuster Podcast, at Slumpbuster Pod, at Slumpbuster Podcast on IG. Every major streaming platform is the same here on GG Talk Sports. And then, of course, promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Go ahead and use that, 20% off plus free shipping and handling. Promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Where everyone listening out there, you stay safe, happy, and healthy. And we'll be back later on this week.